Test, test. All right, good morning. Welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative hearing for April 22nd, 2026. As you know, I am not Kumar Barve. I'm filling in for him. He is unavailable here today, but we will continue to move forward. We have minutes to approve from our April 8th meeting. For those of you who were here, are there any changes or modifications proposed? No? All right, then I will move that we accept the minutes from our April 8th meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. The minutes have been adopted. We will move on to our consent agenda. We have 8 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is Power Management LLC's request to cancel its gas broker license. Item number 2 is Bridge Energy Services LLC's application for a license to supply electricity or electric supply services in Maryland. Item number 3 is Resource Energy Solutions notice of indirect change of control. Item number 4 is also Resource Energy Solutions LLC's notice of indirect change of control. Churchville Solar LLC has item number 5. It's a request for extension of operational deadline for a project in Harford County. Item number 6 is Green Power Partners and RER Maryland Community Solar 57 LLC's request for extension of operational deadline for a project in Garrett County. Item number 7 is American Electric Power's request for certification as a renewable energy facility. And item number 8 is PEG Bandwidth MD's LLC and Unity National LLC's request for approval of certain financing arrangements. Item number 9 is Custom Teleconnect Incorporated's. Item number 9 is not on the consent agenda, so we will stop at item number 8. Are there any requests to separate any of these items? All right, seeing none, then I will make motions for all of them. For item number 1, I will move that we approve the cancellation request. For item number 2, I will move we grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland, limited to broker services for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff, and direct the company to notify the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in the application. For items number 3 and 4, I move we note the filings. For item number 5, I move we grant the requested limited waiver of COMAR 20.62.03.04C and extend the operational deadline for the Churchville Solar Project to April 26, 2027. For item number 6, I move we grant the requested limited waiver of COMAR 20.62.03.04C and extend the operational deadline for the Beeman Solar Project to December 31st, 2026. For item number 7, I move we approve the application and issue a Renewable Energy Facility ID certification number, direct the applicant to establish a REC account with PJM GATS within 30 days of certification, and direct the applicant to notify the Commission within 30 days if the information on which the application is based should change. And finally, for item number 8, I move that we note the filing. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
I vote aye. And with that, those motions are granted. So we'll move now to item number 9, Custom Teleconnect Incorporated's request for cancellation of authority.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Alden Manka on behalf of staff. On March 16th, 2026, Custom Teleconnect Inc. filed a request for cancellation of its authority to provide resold inter-exchange telecommunications services in Maryland and of any tariffs on file with the Commission. Custom Teleconnect was granted authority to operate exclusively as an inter-exchange carrier in Maryland in 2002 in Mail Log 77403. In 2015, the Commission issued its Notice of Deregulation of Inter-Exchange Telecommunications Services, declaring that carriers that provide inter-exchange services exclusively in Maryland would no longer be regulated by the Commission as of July 1st, 2015. Under that notice and the updated Public Utilities Article definition of telephone company, Custom Teleconnect no longer falls within the Commission's jurisdiction since the company operates exclusively as an inter-exchange carrier. As Comar 20.45.04.13 applies only to local telephone services, those service discontinuation requirements, such as customer notice, do not apply since Custom Teleconnect does not provide local telephone service. However, Custom Teleconnect does not have any customers in Maryland that would have needed to be notified otherwise. Therefore, staff recommends the Commission cancel the company's operating authority and any tariffs on file, with the understanding that the company will file a new application for operating authority if the company seeks in the future to offer or own any facilities to offer any services in Maryland over which the Commission has jurisdiction. Thank you, and I am available for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Seeing none. Is there a representative of Custom Teleconnect here today? I don't see anyone moving. All right. Then I will make a motion to cancel the company's operating authority and any tariffs on file, with the understanding that the company will file a new application for operating authority if it seeks in the future to offer or own any facilities to offer any services in Maryland over which the Commission has jurisdiction. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
I vote aye. Item number 10, thank you to our staff. Item number 10 is Brookfield Renewable North America's request for an updated letter requesting PJM Environmental Information Services Incorporated to develop import protocols.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Kevin Mosier on behalf of staff. By letter dated August 6, 2025, Brookfield Renewable North America filed a request for a letter from PJM to develop import protocols for RECs from the New York GATS system. Having reviewed the filing and determined that these RECs would likely just be replacing compliance payments for the RPS that stay in state, staff recommends that the Commission deny the request.
All right, thank you. Any questions for our staff? Seeing none, is there a representative here from Brookfield Renewable North America? Please.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Daniel DePillo here on behalf of Brookfield Renewable.
Okay, come a little closer.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Daniel DePillo here on behalf of Brookfield Renewable North America. Thank you for taking the time today to discuss our request, and thank you to staff for preparing their comments. We are requesting the development of these import protocols as we view each additional imported renewable energy certificate will result in further achievement of the stated policy goals of the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, thereby achieving this policy goal while also aiding in the reduction of costs through less alternative compliance payments for Marylanders. We would also like to highlight that this cost reduction does not just occur through increased supply of renewable energy certificates. However, for an import of RECs, it is required to also import the associated clean power, which would necessarily lower wholesale energy prices in the PJM region, as well as likely aid in reducing emissions by offsetting less efficient marginal generators. I would make myself available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the company's representative? So I did have one question for you. The staff has recommended, I'm sure you've seen a copy of their filing, and you thanked them for their comments, but they are recommending that we deny your request. So what is your response to that?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. There are a few points I would like to touch on as to why we feel this request should still be approved. First and foremost, the issue at hand is related to a software issue. We would like to highlight we are not requesting any change in policy. The change would require that the PJM generation attribute tracking system implement an import protocol that is already discussed and outlined in their operating rules. Additionally, within the definition of a renewable energy certificate, under the Maryland Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, it already includes language around the import of RECs from out-of-state facilities. So this is nothing new from a policy perspective. We also see strong precedent for the import of renewable energy certificates within the Maryland RPS, as seen through what generation sources are being retired on behalf of the program. Looking at the 2024 numbers, the majority of generation that was retired for the Tier 1 program, excluding the solar carve-out, came from Virginia at 27% of retired attributes. For additional context, the second largest supply came from Maryland at 17.4%, and then third from North Carolina at 13.8%. Additionally, when we look at the Tier 2 program, virtually all of the renewable energy certificates retired for compliance come from out-of-state and out-of-region generation, so there is strong precedent for this approach. Given the additional affordability that this allows for Maryland ratepayers, and considering the strong precedent that exists for this, we feel that this should be approved. Thank you.
Okay, so the PJM to date, at least, has not attempted to create a process to allow for the transfer of RECs from New York to here. Is that your understanding?
That is correct.
Okay. And as you know, the commission doesn't have any authority to, I guess for the lack of a better word, order them to do it.
If I can respond to that.
Sure.
So the reason we bring this request to the commission, we had brought this to PJM Environmental Information Services ourselves. We were informed that since their organization was formed by and in service of the member states, any change must come at the request of a member state. We had then brought this to Maryland. We have a history in the 2010s prior to the modern tracking system. We had been importing renewable energy certificates into the state and working with you all for that. And then additionally, given that our generation, because of this historic precedent, already has the requisite Tier 1 certificate numbers associated with them, with your request that they implement this protocol, we would be ready to immediately increase supply for the Maryland Renewable Portfolio Standard once they were to implement based on your request.
Okay. All right. Any other questions in response to mine? No. All right. Thank you. Does staff have anything further to add?
One minor thing. PGM had responded a few years back when you had requested and stated that it would take several months and be rather expensive. I did get verification that that timeline and the expenses are about the same as their last letter when they explained that, again, it would be expensive and timely, or and take a fair amount of time.
Okay. So I'm not aware of any PGM process that they've gone through to proceed with this. What would be the allocation of costs if we were to issue this letter?
I think the cost would be spread across all of the states, although I'm not sure. We haven't gotten that sort of detail from PGM. They essentially just said that, again, kind of backed up what they said in that letter from 2018, that it would be a pretty expensive process, and I think they said it would take over a year.
Okay. All right. No other questions? Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Suchman.
Yeah, so Mr. Mosier, in terms of very expensive, what are we talking about?
I don't recall. I don't think they gave us a specific number. I want to say in the hundreds of thousands. I think that's what the letter said.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you. So I will make a motion that we deny the request. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 11, and let's see, well, let me see. Yeah. We'll call items number 11 and 12 together. Item number 11 is a request for order requiring Delmarva Power and Light to comply with mandatory level 4 interconnection study deadlines. It's made by NextAmp Incorporated. And item number 12, Clean Capital Holdings LLC's request for order requiring Delmarva Power and Light to comply with mandatory level 4 interconnection study deadlines. Good morning to our technical staff.
Good morning, Commissioners. DeAndre Wilson on behalf of technical staff. On March 17th, 2026 and March 23rd, 2026, NextAmp Incorporated and Clean Capital Holdings LLC each filed requests for the Commission to order Delmarva Power and Light Company to comply with the mandatory Level 4 interconnection study deadlines outlined in COMAR 2050-0912E related to delayed interconnection study results for multiple community solar projects located in Delmarva's service territory. Both NextAmp and Clean Capital assert that Delmarva Power has failed to comply with the mandatory timelines set forth in COMAR 2050-0912E governing Level 4 interconnection study review. Specifically, the developers allege that Delmarva Power has not completed and transmitted study results within the required timeframes, thereby preventing projects from advancing to interconnection agreements, securing financing, and proceeding to construction. According to COMAR 2050-0912, which establishes a structured and time-bound interconnection process, the Level 4 interconnection process includes a feasibility study, which shall be completed within 30 calendar days after execution of the study agreement, a system impact study, which shall be completed within 45 calendar days after the execution of an interconnection system impact study agreement, a facility study, which shall be completed within 30 calendar days if there are no upgrades, or 45 days with upgrades after the interconnection facility study agreement is signed by both parties, and an interconnection agreement, which shall be provided within 5 business days following completion of the facilities study. Pursuant to COMAR 2050-0912D, by mutual agreement of the utility and applicant, these interconnection studies provided for in a Level 4 review may be waived or combined. The projects at issue, as reported by NextAmp and Clean Capital, are experiencing delays on the order of 100 to over 600 days beyond COMAR timelines, with an average delay of several hundred days, demonstrating a clear, systematic breakdown in Delmarva's interconnection process. In addition to its review of Delmarva Power's response to staff data requests, review of the company's internal procedural documents, and a virtual meeting to discuss the circumstances underlying these interconnection delays, Delmarva Power explained that the increase in interconnection study timelines is attributable in part to a significant rise in Level 4 interconnection applications, citing several contributing factors, including changes associated with technical interconnection requirements, the transition of the community solar pilot program to a permanent program, and broader policy developments associated with Public Conference 73, which have contributed to increased complexity and volume of interconnection requests within its service territory. Review of Delmarva's 2025 Annual Small Generator Interconnection Report provides further context regarding the scale and characteristics of the company's interconnection workload. According to Delmarva Power's report, The company reported receiving a total of 245 Level 4 interconnection requests in 2025, representing approximately 831,000 kilowatts of requested capacity out of a total of 895,000 kilowatts across all interconnection levels. The company approved a total of 154 of those Level 4 requests. This data confirms that Level 4 interconnection activity constitutes a substantial portion of the company's interconnection portfolio and underscore the significance of the issues raised by NextAmp and Clean Capital. In addition, pursuant to Commission Order Number 91984, in its missed interconnection deadline report, Delmarva Power further identified contributing factors to missed milestones, including the rapid growth of distributed energy resource applications, system and data management constraints, and lack of full integration between internal tracking systems. The company also cited project-specific complexities, including the need for coordination with transmission and substation teams for upgrades and restudies associated with co-located projects entering the queue at various times. In response to these challenges, Delmarva Power has stated that it is undertaking internal process improvements, including participation in subgroup discussions and forums focused on streamlining interconnection procedures and enhancing coordination across stakeholders, with its current efforts focused on working through best-case scenarios to accelerate study completion and reduce its backlog. While increased participation in community solar programs and policy developments such as PC 73 may contribute to application volume, such factors do not modify or relieve the company of its obligation to comply with the mandatory timelines established under COMAR 2050-1209-12. Although Delmarva Power has acknowledged the existence of delays and provided near-time commitments for completing outstanding study results with NextAmp and Clean Capital, and has initiated corrective actions to complete outstanding study results in the near future, the company did not identify any specific regulatory basis for deviating from the timelines set forth in COMAR 2050-09-12, nor has it demonstrated compliance with multiple provisions of COMAR 2050-09-12, governing the Level 4 interconnection process, including mandatory study completion timelines, timely issuance of interconnection agreements, application processing requirements, and conditions governing the consolidation of interconnection studies. The company has also not sought or obtained commission approval for modifications to the required interconnection study process or timelines. With that, staff finds that the delays identified in this proceeding are systematic in nature and reflect underlying process and system limitations that require commission oversight to ensure sustained compliance with COMAR requirements that warrant immediate project-specific relief accompanied by conditions and reporting requirements to ensure future compliance and to protect the integrity of the Commission's regulatory framework. In a recent comments filed by Delmarva to this filing has indicated that it has provided NextAmp and Capital Clean relief have provided them their requested relief. Therefore, staff's original recommendations that the Commission direct Delmarva to grant the relief requested by NextAmp and Clean Capital to complete and transmit all outstanding interconnection study results for all of NextAmp and Clean Capital projects within 30 days of the Commission's order, or no later than May 30th, 2026, may be amended, but to ensure the timely resolution of the identified delayed Level 4 projects in Delmarva's existing queue, and to promote compliance with the requirements of COMAR 2050-09-12 going forward, staff also recommends that the Commission direct Delmarva within 60 days file proposed revisions to its interconnection procedures demonstrating 1. Compliance with all timelines in COMAR 2050-0912, implementation of internal controls to ensure adherence to deadlines, and a process for ensuring that any consolidation of studies occurs only by mutual agreement, consistent with COMAR 2050-0912D. In addition, staff recommends that the Commission direct Delmarva to comply with the following additional reporting requirements. 1. If the company has not satisfied the request of Clean Capital, Delmarva should be directed to provide a status report detailing 1. Status of Clean Capital's projects, 2. Completeness percentages, and 3. Identification of any continued delays. 2. Within 30 days of the Commission's order, Delmarva should provide a system-wide backlog report detailing all Level 4 projects, age and status of each project, time elapsed at each stage, and compliance with COMAR timelines. Delmarva should also provide a root cause analysis report detailing staffing levels and capacity, causes of delays, and throughput constraints. And finally, Delmarva should be directed to provide a corrective action plan that details specific actions to achieve compliance. And lastly, timeline for full compliance. With that, staff recommends that the Commission direct Delmarva to grant the relief requested by NextAmp and Clean Capital, and to complete and transmit all outstanding interconnection study results and agreements for those projects within 30 days of the Commission's order, but no later than May 30th, 2026, and that all study results comply with COMAR 2050-0912E. Furthermore, staff recommends that Delmarva be ordered to adhere to the conditions set forth herein to ensure timely resolution of the delayed Level 4 projects within its existing queue in compliance with COMAR 2050-0912. Staff notes that comments have been filed to this bug sheet by CCSA and Delmarva themselves, and staff is available for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Questions from the bench? Commissioner Suchman.
Good morning, Mr. Wilson. First, I just have a very quick comment, which is that we initiated PC 73 because of Commission concern that there were a number of projects that were not going to meet the deadline required in order to be able to take advantage of expiring tax credits. So it just seems to me that this is an unusual situation where we really did need all hands on deck, and I'm troubled that we're sort of faced with a proceeding like today because these projects aren't getting the kind of consideration that we had expected that they would get when we issued several of our orders under PC 73. So I just wanted to make that sort of initial comment. Now, DPL says that for purposes of Nexam and Clean Capital, that their issues are essentially moot, that the studies have already been done. Can you clarify, sort of where are we in terms of the various projects that are before us and in terms of the studies?
Based on the information that was provided to staff in regards to those projects, Delmarva did indicate that they have satisfied the request of NextAmp by providing them with results of their studies and cost letters. Delmarva, if I recall, also stated that they still have results and cost letters, or maybe even interconnection agreements that they have to provide to Clean Capital, and they were planning to provide those requested items to the company before the end of this month.
Okay, so by the end of this month, everything that they're asking for, that they sort of felt compelled to come to us for, because it hadn't been provided to them, that they will have everything they need by the end of this month.
That's what was indicated to us by Delmarva in regards to Next Amp and Clean Capital.
Okay, and I will ask the applicant if that's the case. Now, there are 170 applications that are still sort of backlogged. Is that and the suggestion of DPL that they will be able to address those backlogs within the next 6 months? Is that your sense? Or because backlogs, you can have backlogs, but you're going to continue to have backlogs added to that if the process is not moving forward. So it's 170 is not a fixed number. It's just a number in time. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that is indeed a number in time. There's no telling how many more applications the company may receive between now and the next 6 months. But I think the overall staff's overall belief is that the company has some internal processes that have to be improved in order for it to successfully review the existing applicants that are in their queue and any future applications that they may receive in order to meet COMAR's timelines for those projects to meet whatever other milestones they may have to meet in order for those projects to be operational.
Okay, and we're looking up against, we're heading to a deadline. So it's not like we have all the time in the world. We're gonna be facing a cutoff of federal support, and so we really sort of need to move these things along. Are you getting any sort of calls from other developers that are experiencing similar delays?
There's one other item that was that has been on the commission's agenda over the past maybe month or so, where another developer had voiced similar complaints in regards to, or voiced similar concerns in regards to their interconnection process of Delmarva. The company is continuing they indicated to staff that they are continuing to work with Delmarva and rescinded their filing, but that in itself is an indication that other developers are experiencing some of the same issues.
Okay, and has DPL reached out to you to let you know that they are struggling, that they have sort of staffing issues or some other issues that are impeding their ability to meet the COMAR requirements?
Outside of staff's inquiry in regards to these particular filings, we had not received any communications from Delmarva in regards to their inability to meet these study deadlines or timelines associated with the studies of the projects in their interconnection.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. That's all I have.
Commissioner McLean.
Morning, sir. Quick question. Is this issue isolated to Delmarva, or are there similar issues being raised in other utility jurisdictions?
Based on staff's review and further research of the company's filings, their interconnection, the annual interconnection reports, recent filings at the request of the commission, such as their missed interconnection timelines report, this seems to be isolated to Delmarva. The other companies have not shown any signs that they are having issues to meet those timelines. But I will point out that I will acknowledge that Delmarva is, compared to the other utility companies, Delmarva is seeing an increased level of level 4 interconnection requests.
All right. Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Wilson, this morning, as part of the staff's presentation, you proposed several other reporting recommendations I won't say in place of, but in addition to what was already recommended. Were those shared at all with DPL prior to this morning?
They were. Delmarva has indicated that they have seen staff's recommended recommendations in regards to additional reporting, and in the company's comments, they've indicated that they would be in support of staff's recommendations, but the company can speak further to that.
And that's including the filing of a CAP.
As far as, from what I recall, yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I guess we have the company up next.
Thank you,
So,
Chair.
So you're the applicants, but which one are you representing here today?
I'm here on behalf of both companies,
Okay,
Chair.
all right. Two
So,
for one. All right.
thank you, Chair Linton, Commissioners David Buellmans, on behalf of both Nexamp and Clean Capital this morning. I'm also joined this morning from Nexamp by Jake Springer, and from Clean Capital, Alicia Scott, Emily Harwood, and Scott Elias. To begin, we'd like to thank staff for its careful and thorough review of this issue. We support staff's recommendation before you in full. Staff has confirmed our position that DPL's noncompliance with COMAR has caused delays for specifically Nexamp and Clean Capital, ranging from anywhere between several months to more than 600 days. And there's real practical consequences of this. These projects cannot advance without study results. That means they cannot begin permitting. They obviously cannot engage in financing. Construction cannot begin. And in the meantime, subscribers or potential subscribers need to wait. The teams from Nexamp and Clean Capital, again, are here with me today, and they'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about the specific consequences they have faced as a result of these delays. There was some discussion with Commissioner Sushman about PC 73 and the desire to try to get these projects qualified for the tax credit. I also want to point out that in the Utility Relief Act that recently passed, there's now a grandfathering requirement for projects to stay in the existing net metering program that's based off the payment of interconnection deposits. So all of these issues delay the ability of projects to get to that point. And so this is compounding sort of the existential threat in terms of the financial viability of these projects the longer that these studies are outstanding. I do want to briefly address DPL's written response, and specifically its request that the Commission dismiss these matters. We respectfully oppose that request for a number of reasons. It is correct, as staff indicated, that DPL has transmitted all the studies that were outstanding to Nexamp, and all but 2 studies for Clean Capital. But for Clean Capital, there's 2 studies that have not been provided, so that's still an open issue. In addition to that, if you look at our request, we were also requesting that the utility transmit the interconnection agreements for execution within 5 business days of transmission of those studies, which is another requirement of COMAR. And even though DPL has provided these letters for several of the projects, it has not done that. So that's an open issue that is still outstanding. There's also some additional issues that we indicated in the Clean Capital filing. For instance, 2 of Clean Capital's projects, Cottontail and Galena Road, have been stuck in DPL's technical review for 163 and 97 days respectively without even receiving study agreements. So for those projects, they can't even begin to get into the process where these timelines, that's the primary focus today, would even apply. So they're effectively in limbo. If you look at COMAR, when you add up the timeline for the required completeness review and scoping meeting, DPL was supposed to provide those study agreements to Clean Capital for execution within approximately 20 days. So again, another issue. In addition, there's 2 more Clean Capital projects that have faced month-long waits in post-study processing, including with respect to the issuing of invoices. So again, to my point about the Utility Relief Act and that grandfathering deadline, that's an outstanding issue that we're hoping can be addressed. So again, we support and do not oppose staff's broader recommendation, but we just don't want to lose sight of these specific projects and the relief that's been requested. That being said, staff's findings do show that there is a problem that is not confined to this stage of the process or to these specific developers. And in our mind, it does reflect a broader misalignment between DPL's internal procedures and what COMAR requires. And notably, it seems like for the most part, DPL does not object to staff's forward-looking recommendations. To Commissioner Sushman's question about other developers, I work with many developers, and this issue with respect to study timelines has been a recurring theme I've heard from many developers. It's just that for these two developers, it got to a point where they just couldn't wait any longer. We had to come to the commission. But in my experience, this is a pervasive issue we've seen for quite some time. So again, we respectfully urge the commission to adopt staff's recommendation and grant the specific relief for these projects. Appreciate your consideration and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicants?
Actually,
No.
so
Commissioner Hoover.
how much of this is a function of the, which staff sort of alluded to in their comments, of the sort of volume of projects in Delmarva's service territory, since Eastern Shore seems to be the favorite siting grounds for these projects?
So this issue has been going on for some time, just generally. I've been receiving questions about the study timelines, miscommunications, like basically trying to get Delmarva to respond to requests to provide these studies and just receiving no response. And, to their credit, I do have a good relationship with Mr. Seegers, and I'm often able to reach out to them and kind of like on a case-by-case basis get the studies, but it has been going on for some time. I mean, there is a large volume of projects in Delmarva. I will add, the staff's point, COMAR says shall with respect to these timelines. They're not optional, and, Delmarva has not requested a modification of the regs or like a good cause waiver or anything like that. So when these individual developers are looking at this and they're making plans, about their development schedules, and it says, like, we're going to get these studies within a certain amount of time, and then it just doesn't happen, for individual developers, it's still an issue, even though I think you're right. There is a volume of them. It's just, in our mind, it doesn't excuse necessarily the issue.
Commissioner Sushman.
I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment. So I guess if you respond, then we can treat it as a question. I'm a little concerned about. So you've come before us because in one project was 600-day delay. And if there are at least 170 projects in the queue, I don't want this to become the default where all projects come before the commission. That to me is an example of a failure. And I would like to find a path forward. I recognize that in looking at a deadline where the tax credits are going to go away, that forced all these projects to come to DPL, and they probably just don't have the resources to manage all of these projects. And so I think at a minimum, DPL should have come to staff and talked to them about the struggles that they were having. I think we need to try to find a path forward that doesn't involve coming here. And I guess, I'll reach out to Mr. Seegers when he comes up. I think we all want to get to the same place. And I just think there's got to be a way that we can make that happen. It's a very short window. We don't want them to overhire because those tax credits are going to go away. Hopefully the projects don't go away, but there is a very short window, and so but I don't want us to become the default.
I could if it's a question, I could respond to it. I completely agree, Commissioner. My desire is for this process to work correctly and for these developers to not even have to bring me in. Frankly, I don't think lawyers should need to be involved to get these studies. COMAR lays out a process. These are technical matters, and ideally, with staff's process, this could right the course of the utility, and then everything would work smoothly, and it wouldn't, be a matter the commission is hearing recurrent requests on, or that even, council's involved with on a frequent basis. So I think I agree with you, Commissioner.
So earlier, you mentioned that you had a good communication level with Mr. Seegers, and I don't doubt that that's true. Commissioner Suchman asked a question to our staff regarding the company's communication with the staff about these issues, so that we would know in advance if something like this was growing as a problem. While your communication with Mr. Seegers has been good, has your client been hearing good information and been communicating cleanly back and forth with the company regarding these issues? Did they just get fed up, or is it something they couldn't work out? Or
Yeah, I mean, both companies have tried to work extensively with the company, and I'm sure you'll hear about it. And some of those discussions have been productive. The issue is that this has been going on for so long, and it's becoming so extreme that we couldn't wait anymore. It got to a point where we felt like we had to go to the commission. And our default, and my default, has always been, let's work with the utility, because that's often, frankly, it's faster as opposed to coming to an admin meeting and doing this. But it was a balance, and I think part of the reason why we're at 600 days for some of these is because they were trying to work this out, and it just got to a point where they couldn't wait any longer.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Sure.
So we also received comments from CCSA.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dexter Hendricks on behalf of CCSA. We support the requests filed by Nexamp and Clean Capital, as well as staff's recommendation. As a trade association, we're really privy to the travails of our members, and as mentioned by Bugelmans, as well as you, Ms. Suchman, the question you posed, these things are common to many of our developers working within DPL territory. These sort of reflect systemic challenges across DPL's interconnection process, including study execution, agreement issuance, and post-study steps. Our position here is really straightforward. In addition to granting the requests filed by Nexamp and Clean Capital, as well as staff's recommendations, we really wanted to bring in front of the Commission sort of an additional issue that should be addressed that's related, and that's around interconnection transparency. As we noted in our filing, current reporting does not provide sufficient visibility into whether utilities are actually complying with CORMAR timelines. Today, key study timeline metrics are either omitted, aggregated in a way that masks level 4 performance, or lack information on how far deadlines are being exceeded. CCSA is not asking for new requirements necessarily, but for more complete and usable reporting. Specifically, reporting should clearly track performance against each required study timeline, be disaggregated by interconnection level and study type, and include basic metrics such as how many studies are completed on time, how many are late, and by how much. Without the level of transparency, it's difficult for the Commission and stakeholders to monitor compliance or identify problems early. I do want to note that CCSA, along with fellow trade organizations SIA and CHESA, have been meeting with DPL in recent weeks in an effort to be more collaborative and find an approach to address these challenges. We are encouraged by DPL's willingness to engage, and we look forward to continuing that dialogue. But we do believe that the recommendations outlined in our filing and by staff are an important step in helping all parties here involved to move forward and develop a more functional and predictable interconnection process in Maryland. And in closing, I'd like to really underline the fact that enforcing these timelines and improving reporting are both essential to ensuring an orderly and predictable interconnection process and to advancing Maryland's clean energy goals. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the CCSA? Mr. Chairman Hoover.
So it was asked earlier of folks, are you aware of any other of similar issues with the other utilities, or is this kind of a DPL issue?
There are issues with other utilities. The other ones, they may not, sort of be primarily around the study timelines. They might occur at different points in interconnection process. For example, there have been some delays in particularly the construction timelines for other utilities, PE to name one. So, for example, there will be sort of construction execution delays, and obviously as we go towards IDC deadlines, that's going to become much more of an issue. So there are sort of different parts in the process of interconnection where utilities might have issues and fall down.
And how big a factor is this federal abandonment issue to the process?
Well, it certainly increases the urgency for developers to really want to come and figure out what mitigations they can use to get things moving quickly, as underlined by Komar. As mentioned by David Bugelmans, these issues have been happening for quite a while. We've been trying to work as best as possible with the utilities, understanding they're under many constraints. In DPL's case, of course, as has been mentioned, they got inundated by applications in a very short period of time. And there's some sense of understanding, maybe there needs to be a bedding in period to really develop processes to address them. But it has been a number of years. And of course, when the ITC shortfall became a reality, all of a sudden, as you can imagine, folks are realizing that sort of the financing capabilities or possibilities around projects is going to be a completely different picture a couple years down the line. So the urgency has certainly been lit. PC 73 was a great step forward. I think some great things were done. However, there's still issues that need to be addressed.
All right, thank you very much. Let's hear from the company, Delmarva. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Seegers appearing on behalf of Delmarva Power. I also have two of my subject matter experts with me who can answer any questions that I cannot. We filed written comments, as been previously noted, in response to the Nexamp and Clean Capital filings, as well as staff's buck sheet, so I'm just going to hit the main points. First of all, as Delmarva Power noted in our filing, we acknowledge that the company has faced challenges in meeting the timeline specified in Komar for completing interconnection studies for specific projects. This, quite frankly, was the result of a perfect storm. As noted on Table 1 of page 3 of our filing, beginning in 2024, Delmarva Power received an enormous amount of Level 4 interconnection requests, 4 to 5 times the amount that it received in prior years. As we've discussed, this was largely the result of the community solar program becoming a permanent program, as well as the efforts to expedite the interconnection of renewables in light of the tax incentives going away. This resulted in Delmarva Power not having, at the time, sufficient resources in place to handle such a massive increase in applications, for the simple reason that it was very hard for Delmarva to try and predict that it would have such a massive increase in these applications. Nonetheless, as we described in our filing, we have taken a number of steps in order to remedy this. First of all, we have reorganized our engineering and project management departments for distributed energy resource interconnections by consolidating functions and by that were previously housed in several engineering and project management departments into a single distributed energy resource interconnection team. The staffing of this team began in 2025, and the company has continued to increase its engineering and project management resources through hiring and contracting. Delmarva Power is also implementing technology and process enhancements that will provide better tracking and performance measurements of many of the steps of the interconnection process, which will help identify any lingering deficiencies and signal the need for additional staffing or process improvement in the future. And these efforts are bearing fruit. Commissioner Suchman, in response to your question, as of the end of last month, March, we had approximately 100 Level 4 projects in our backlog. As I stand here today, that has been reduced by 25%, which we think is very considerable progress just given in less than a month's time. Regarding the Nexamp and Clean Capital filings, as we noted, we have already either satisfied or in the process of satisfying their relief requested regarding the delivery of the study results. I frankly was not aware that they were not given interconnection agreements. That is something that we will certainly do in compliance with the reports. But we believe that once we do all of that, their immediate concerns with their specific projects will have been addressed. As for staff's buck sheet, as we indicated in our comments, that we don't have any objection to staff's recommendations as described in our filing. However, I do want to address two what I believe were misstatements by staff. First of all, as we described in our filing, Commission staff incorrectly claims that Delmarva Power does not maintain or a comprehensive or consistently applied mechanism for tracking compliance with the timeline set forth in Komar. That is not correct. We use an online platform called Connect the Grid to interface with interconnection applicants and to track the status of projects. CTG, for short, It includes timers and date stamps that highlight when a project has reached a certain stage or milestone, and it is monitored on a daily basis, and it is what we use to monitor the end-to-end processing of each interconnection application. Second, Delmarva staff correctly claims that it is our practice to consolidate interconnection studies. But staff also says that the record does not demonstrate that Delmarva's consolidated approach is consistently implemented on a project-specific basis with mutual agreement. However, our practice of consolidating interconnection agreements is widely known within the developer industry. We have spoken about it in the interconnection working group, and in fact, many developers have expressed support for this approach. What we do is we split the system impact study in between the first study, which is the feasibility study, and the third study, which is the facilities study. And so in other words, when the developers, when they get the results of the feasibility study, they actually get more than what is anticipated by COMAR, and they like that. They want as much information as early as possible. So now that being said, the developers are very sophisticated parties. They obviously are very familiar with the interconnection rules. They always have the ability to say, no, I don't want you to consolidate the studies. I want 3 separate studies. And we would of course have to honor that. No developer, at least not for NextAmp and Clean Capital, has made that request. So, and finally, regarding CCSA's filing, Delmarva Power believes that its written response addresses many of the concerns that were expressed in CCS filing. However, we do take issue with CCSA's characterization of our compliance reporting in our annual interconnection reports. CCSA criticizes Delmarva Power's reporting of its completion of initial review for completeness on a consolidated basis, and alleges that this reporting lacks clarity and obscures the extent of study delays. However, it is notable that CSA does not allege that Delmarva Power is not complying with its COMAR reporting obligations, which is likely because they can't. Delmarva Power has reported in this manner for at least the past 10 years, and no party has alleged that Delmarva reports were improper or did not comply with the Commission's interconnection reporting requirements. Moreover, our interconnection reports actually include more information than what is required by the Commission's interconnection regulations. Specifically, pursuant to an Exelon PHI merger commitment from order number 86990, Delmarva Power is required to include the following. First, the total number of and nameplate capacity of interconnection requests received and approved and denied under level 1, 2, 3, and 4 reviews. And 2, the number of and an explanation of the interconnection requests that were not processed within the established timelines. Should the delays impact more than 10% of the interconnection requests in a reporting year, PHI shall include its plans and associated costs and address the estimated delays. This is important because this shows a recognition by this commission that we always try to hit 100% compliance, but it shows that we may not be able to do that in every single case. Delmarva Power we also submit annual merger compliance reports in case number 9361, in which we demonstrate compliance with our merger commitments, and no party has alleged or demonstrated that Delmarva Power is not complying with this particular merger commitment. Having said all of that, Delmarva Power has no objection to beginning to report in the manner that CCSA is requesting. However, to the extent that this commission is going to clarify its regulations to require this, then that clarification should apply to all utilities and should be done in a more generally applicable context where all stakeholders who would be affected would have notice. With that, as I said before, I and 2 of my subject matter experts are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions for the company? All right, let's see. Seems like everybody has questions, so.
I'm not surprised.
Let's go ahead. You ready? Okay.
All right.
Commissioner Hoover.
So the personnel that work on these studies, are they all Delmarva employees, or do you use outside contractors?
I'm going to be looking at my subject matter expert. I believe it is a mixture of both. So, yes, that is correct.
And at the beginning of your comments, you described this perfect storm situation of the volume of projects. So the folks that are sort of in the trenches and are doing this, I mean, were they the ones who first sounded the alarm? I guess I'm trying to get a sense of what the timeline of the company's response to the influx of applications to when they decided to make the reorganization changes and add personnel and other things.
Sure. Commissioner Hoover, if you look at our filing on, as I indicated on page 3 with the table that shows the very significant number of increase in applications that we received in 2024 and 2025, the decision was made in order to reorganize our interconnection engineering departments. It was made in November of 2024 because we had consistently seen a number of months where we had seen higher application volumes that were just becoming very hard to process within the time frame. That was launched in January of 2025, and we have been staffing up. One problem that we're facing is that it takes time to get people, first of all, to hire them, and second of all, it takes about 3 months to make sure that we train them up, for lack of a better way to put it. They have to become, first of all, they have to learn the rules and become familiar with them. They have to become familiar with our distribution system, our internal standards, and that takes time. We want to make sure that these people know what they're doing, and so we are not trying to put the safety and reliability of our system in jeopardy. So that's another issue that we were facing.
So I take it then this thing was driven more by the fact that your service territory is so attractive to the solar developers as opposed to the problem with the abandonment of the federal support, because that didn't happen until February, right?
That is in terms of when the big beautiful bill became law, that date is escaping me. But I can't speak for the other service territories. For Pepco, I can. But Delmarva Power, you are correct. It is attractive because we have a lot of lands where they can build these large level 4 projects, and land is cheaper out there.
Right.
So it's no surprise that we're seeing such a huge. Well, I shouldn't say no surprise. It is not surprising that area would be attractive to developers.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Commissioner McLean.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
On the combination of the studies, is it Delmarva's position that because your practice of combining them is so well known that unless the developer says, I want separate agreements, they're essentially agreeing with you to do the combined study?
I believe that's correct, sir. And like I said, these developers, they know the rules. If they want 3 separate studies, then they can certainly ask for them, and we would honor that request. But as I also indicated in my comments, the developers, for the most part, they like this approach. In fact, in almost every case, they like this approach. Because as I indicated, for the feasibility study, that also includes a portion of the system impact study. So they are getting more information than they would if we simply did the feasibility study, and they like that.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. And Mr. Bugelman's referenced a couple other projects, I think outside of the ones that were specifically addressed by Delmarva on page 4 of his comments for Clean Capital, Cottontail and Galena. They've been in technical review for over 4 months and over 2 months, and without receiving study agreements. Have those issues been fixed, or is that kind of separate from this filing?
I don't have any information on those specific projects.
Okay.
I can look to, I don't know if my subject matter experts know either, unfortunately. We were
Okay.
not prepared to speak to those.
Okay.
Sorry. I could bring up Mr. Larry Alston, who can address that a little bit more.
Good morning, commissioners, commission staff. Those 2 projects, we
we were meeting with Clean Capital ahead of the filing. So we had a list of projects that they were looking for responses on. We took that list of projects and indicated what we could provide by which date. Those last two are the two that we committed to towards by April the 30th. That's what's outstanding.
Okay, so April 30th. Okay, and there were two other ones that I just wanted to make sure these are being addressed as well. Old Virginia Road and Piper Plover.
Those are the two projects that I believe we communicated with over the last 24 hours.
Okay.
That just wanted to be address those as well, but they weren't a part of the file.
All right, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Fleshman.
Okay. Mr. Seegers, you described the perfect storm, and sort of a recognition that you were being overwhelmed by the number of requests coming in. Had it occurred to you to reach out to staff at the moment where, and not you personally, but whoever was running the program could see this inundation in the number of applications coming in, recognizing that there was going to be a challenge in being able to comply with COMAR with all of these projects? Did it occur to anybody to contact staff to let them know we're going to run into a resource problem because we have all these requests and we're not going to be able to respond in time?
Commissioner, I am not aware of any attempt to reach out to staff when we late in 2024 when we saw these application amounts as they were building up. But like I said, we were closely monitoring it, and as of November of 2024, we did act because we did say, okay, we have to change because we're falling behind and we have to remedy this situation. And like I said, we are all, it's working right now.
Well, I'm glad that you're sort of taking on the responsibility of trying to address it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it's not helping any of us. It's not helping commission, staff, if we're kept in the dark. I mean, certainly if this were a reliability problem, we'd hear from you very quickly. It's better for the system as a whole. If you are perceiving that there's a problem, that we find a way, we as, commission and staff and parties, we find a way to address it. Because if we don't, then we're going to find ourselves in the situation we're in today, which is, you have 170 plus projects with a big backlog. Mr. Bilgemans has clients that have been waiting 600 days for a study to be completed, and I'm not casting blame. It just seems to me that once you identify a problem, it's just so much better if you come to us, you come to staff and say, we have a problem and we need to find a path forward.
We're always willing to communicate with staff. So yes, we can certainly do that on a going forward basis, Your Honor.
Okay, that is really on any issue. Keeping us in the dark just means that we're going to have to take it on at a time when it's really dark. So it's just if there's a problem, it's not going to go away. It's much better if you come to us. Now, in terms of the recommendations that staff has proposed in its buck sheet, can you be very specific about which recommendations you are comfortable with and which recommendations you're not comfortable with?
Well, I believe in our comments we said that we were amenable to each one.
To all of them? Okay.
Yes, I believe we said that in our comments, but I'm looking for.
Well, because in your comments you actually were also responsive to statements that they made that you had problems with. So I just want to be clear on the recommendation, the specific recommendations that they have made you're comfortable with it. So we issue an order accepting their recommendations. That's not going to be a problem for the company. You're going to be able to comply with all of those directives.
Yes, nothing about our comments has changed, Your Honor. If that's just so.
Okay,
and
but
just looking at
my follow-up question is you're not going to have an issue of compliance. You're going to be able to comply with everything that staff is recommending.
We are able to do everything that staff is recommending. Yes. if
And-
that's your question.
You can do it and you'll be able to comply, and you can do it, but, and still not be in compliance. So there's not going to be an issue in terms of compliance. You're going to be able to meet the deadlines that they've laid out.
I believe what staff has asked for is a process for how we are going to come back into compliance, and
But there was also things about like within 30 days. So you're not going to have a problem with that.
If you're referring to the system-wide, the backlog report, and the root
Complete
cause
all study
analysis,
results
corrective action
and
plan.
agreements within 30 days. And that includes the studies that are still outstanding that Mr. Buellmans has identified.
If you're referring to NextStep and Clean Capital, yes, we have, for the last two projects for Clean Capital, they will have those by the end of this month, so we have no issue with that.
Okay, so we issue an order, we accept all of staff's recommendations, we're fine.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there are no other questions for the company. I see you still have a line behind you, so.
Commissioner,
Thank you.
commissioners, if possible, could staff respond to Delmarva's?
Sure, why don't we have CCSA, and then we'll have staff close us out.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hendricks, again. I just wanted to, for the record, say that we are amenable to a wide stakeholder process to update the interconnection reporting requirements. I think it would be perfect for the interconnection working group led by John Burkowski. I also wanted to give you just a quick, concrete example of the issues we have with the reporting. In the annual report, there's a question number 7. The question is for the utilities to report on the number of scoping meetings held, the number of feasibility studies, impact studies, facility studies, and combined studies performed, and the total fees charged for these studies. On that report, in response to number 7, with all those questions asked in that one question, DPL's response was 14 combined studies. No record of how many scoping meetings or the other studies. And then that's relevant because they said 14 combined studies, but on the annual report, they said that they approved something like 154 projects. So that disconnect between the number of projects, the number of studies, that's the kind of stuff that we just don't understand and makes no sense. So I think it really sort of bears doing, trying to figure out how we can improve the reporting requirements such that this information is more apparent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing no questions, thank you. We'll commission staff, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. Number one, staff just wants to point out in regards to Delmarva's, first of all, we understand that Delmarva, we acknowledge that they are trying to make improvements to the process. They're taking what we feel are proper steps in trying to correct those issues and coming into compliance with COMAR, but it still stands that we had a project that was over 600 days late or has been going on for more than 600 days. So, and it's wide sweeping across the company's process, not just the studies process, but also the agreements process and interconnection process. So we feel that it's definitely a systematic issue. In regards to staff's claim that Delmarva does not maintain a comprehensive or consistently applied mechanism for tracking compliance with timelines, staff's position on that stands in regards to the information that the company provided in response to staff's data request. It's not about the systems that they're using or softwares or systems that they're using, but the information that was provided was not complete in the sense that there were a list of projects that we asked them to provide over the past 2 years that are in their interconnection queue that did not have certain information populated in the chart that they provided. So our understanding was that that information was not available. It wasn't provided to us on several different projects. So it was not, it's more so the management of the systems or their tracking more so than the systems that they are using. And secondly, the company has stated that they are using a combined studies process where our argument is that COMAR 2050-0912D specifically states that the applicant can waive or combine. Based on what we're hearing and what we've read from the company's internal procedure documents, and what Mr. Sagers has stated, is that the company is already using the combined study process before an applicant even comes to apply for interconnection. So upon applying for interconnection, they're already presented with a combined study process. COMAR specifically states that a applicant can waive that, has an option to waive that or combine it. So when we say that they're not in compliance with COMAR, and to that regard, that is what we're speaking of. And the companies, and we'll just point out that the company's overall combined approach is not making the process more efficient based on what we've seen from the amount of delays that they're having. So we just wanted to point those things out. We're not taking away from the company's effort to do so, but at this point, based on what we've seen and what we've discovered, that it's not efficient and it's not within COMAR's requirements.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Commissioner Hoover.
So under the heading of be careful what you wish for, if we adopt your reporting recommendations but make them applicable to all of the utilities, not just Delmarva, is that going to cause staff an issue because you're now going to be basically on the hook to see if there's other problems that occur with other utilities to either take action or bring it to our attention?
No, we don't see that as an issue. It's an added level of reporting to the annual small generator interconnection reports that we already are reviewing and analyzing. So this additional information is just going to help supplement that if it even prevents us from having to send additional data requests to some extent for that information. But no, we don't see it as a burden on staff.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much to all of you. There's several different issues here that I think need to be spelled out a little as far as what the commission will recommend and direct as the next steps that should be taken. So we're going to take this under advisement and produce something in writing very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move on to our next item, item number 13. It's the PC 59 Work Group Stakeholder Proposal for a 5-month, quote, gap, unquote, coverage for limited income mechanism. We are joined by our advisor, intrepid advisor.
Sometimes trepid.
Trepid and intrepid. Let's give us a moment here as our guests from the solar industries are moving around. We may have a presentation. We do. All right.
Okay. We're all right.
All right. Good morning, Ms. Santiago Mosier.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Melanie Santiago Mosier. I'm a Commission Advisor, and this morning I come to you as the leader of the PC 59 Working Group. And thank you for the opportunity to present a stakeholder proposal for your consideration. The PC 59 Working Group has been working diligently to implement the limited income mechanism, which you approved just 2 months ago. I'll be brief this morning because you have our written stakeholder proposal that was filed. But today I do want to offer just a really short overview of our work to date, a very short overview of a challenge that we've uncovered during the course of our meetings and a proposed solution. And I can also give you a quick overview of what's to come as we do continued work to implement the limited income mechanism before the end of the year. So again, you approved the general design of the limited income mechanism back in February, and the working group has started referring to this as the LIM, so I'm going to call it the LIM from here on out. It's a little easier to say. The LIM is based on enrollment with the state for energy assistance benefits like EUSP or MEEP. So a customer who is enrolled in one of those programs then gets to be enrolled within the LIM for the utilities discount. And under the program the design that you approved, the goal of the LIM is to create a credit or a discount for eligible customers so that their utility bills are only approximately 6% of their household incomes. And so when the utilities come to you with their final tariff proposals later in the year, that will be fleshed out a little bit more, but that's generally the goal of the design of the program. In the 11 weeks since you approved the program, the PC59 working group has met 14 times. I really offer my sincere thanks to the whole group for a very high level of engagement, diligence. That's a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations, and a high level of collegiality. This is a wonderful group. Everybody's working towards the same outcomes. We spent about the first 6 weeks of our meetings going through very, very technical details. The utilities need as much time as possible to code and program their systems. So we had an initial sprint of meetings to really try to iron out as many details of the program design as we could. Part of the design of the program, this is a design detail that the Commission didn't really explicitly outline in your order approving the program, but generally speaking, as we've talked about how the program will work and the design of the program, we generally agreed that 12-month enrollment in the LIM, the utility discount, would probably make sense. But again, this is not a design detail that was specifically spelled out in the Commission's order, but again, it started to make sense to us. So the general idea is that once the LIM program becomes operational, existing enrollees within OHEP's energy assistance programs, again, ESP or MEEP, will then automatically get enrolled within the LIM program. So OHEP will be transmitting information to the utilities about customers who are enrolled in the energy assistance programs. And again, we've generally agreed that once a customer becomes enrolled in the LIM, that utility LIM enrollment will last for 12 months. But as sometimes happens, we're talking through the implementation details, we started to uncover a potential issue. Some of the group members have discovered that there is a possibility for some customers who are in the LIM utility discount program to potentially experience a gap in the periods of time that they could actually receive that discount from the utility. And so this has to do with the fact that the OHEP programs, MEEP, EUSP, run on a state fiscal year timing basis. And so a customer who's enrolled for OHEP energy assistance is not automatically re-enrolled. They have to go and proactively reapply for OHEP, EUSP, or MEEP benefits every single year. And they can do that at any time within the fiscal year. So depending on OHEP's or the local administrating agency's capacity or their application processing needs, processing an application for new energy assistance benefits can take 45 days, but we've come up with some scenarios where it could take as much as 4.5 months. And if a customer is not early enough in their reapplication process, that could lead to some potential gaps in their coverage for receiving that utility discount. And again, recall that the LIM utility discount is designed to be based on the customer's enrollment with OHEP. So there's this interesting interplay of timelines here. And again, many of the participants of the PC59 working group are concerned that timing misalignment could mean that a customer receiving the LIM discount could, for periods of time, lose that discount. And so during those periods of time, there's a potential for a customer's bill to increase quite a bit for some months at a time. And that would put additional strain on the customer, additional strain on the service organizations that are responding to the customers as well. So I won't go into too much detail. Our written proposal has a couple of scenarios outlined where we say, whoa, these are some possibilities for how this could actually come about, where a customer could experience a gap in that coverage with the utility discount or the LIM. I do note that Ms. Peltier with the Maryland Energy Advocates Coalition filed some slides that actually kind of walk through some timelines as well. I'll note that Potomac Edison also filed some comments for today. The solution that the stakeholders have proposed is gap coverage. And to allow for up to 5 months of gap coverage. Again, realizing that there could be about a 4.5-month period of time where a customer could experience that gap. The stakeholders believe that gap coverage will preserve the LIM discount benefit for eligible customers whose OHEP benefit timing could, again, misalign with LIM benefit timing for some periods. When a customer is recertified by OHEP, their LIM benefit then would restart. I'll note that all of the members of the PC59 working group are committed to robust customer education, robust communications with customers who are enrolled in the LIM program, to be reminding them about the need to reapply for OHEP benefits in a way that makes it so that we would mitigate the possibility for gaps. But I think some of the stakeholders are cognizant that the customers here are real people with many strains in their lives, and that there is a real potential for just some things like that to fall between the cracks. Let's see. The supporting stakeholders are listed here: technical staff, OPC, OHEP, the National Conference, or excuse me, NCLC, I won't try to spell that out, the Energy Advocates Coalition, and United Way. In their comments, Potomac Edison did reiterate that they support 3 months of gap coverage, and Washington Gas has indicated that they're supportive of a shorter period of gap coverage as well. This is not a unanimous proposal by the working group. There are non-consensus views. So again, Washington Gas has indicated that they are amenable to a shorter period of coverage. Alternatively, Washington Gas operates a discount program in Washington, D.C., where they retroactively credit a customer, so they would be interested in that kind of model. Potomac Edison, again, has indicated that they are amenable to 3 months of gap coverage. Potomac Edison and SMECO have also said if you do approve some period of gap coverage, they would like us to explore the possibility for retrieving any undue funds that, if a customer gets some gap coverage, they reapply for OHEP benefits, turns out they don't qualify for OHEP benefits anymore. There is a desire to explore whether those benefits could be clawed back. To date, no stakeholders have opposed that kind of idea. I will note that the Exelon utilities do not support the stakeholder proposal at all, and do not believe that there's really a huge risk for customers experiencing gaps with the coverage. SMECO also does not support the stakeholder proposal, and again, they also have supported that proposal for clawing back any benefits from customers who may no longer qualify for OHEP. So I just wanted to quickly show you what comes next. We've been meeting quite frequently and will continue to meet pretty frequently. I think from here on out, our meeting frequency will decline somewhat. But the next on our list is to talk about cost allocation. In your order, you expressed a desire to make sure that the C&I customer classes are involved in the conversation, and so we have plans for that going forward. We will be spending a lot of the summertime talking about customer education, marketing for the program. How do we make sure that customers are aware? And again, going back to this question of how do we mitigate the possibility for gaps, and helping customers understand their need to re-enroll with OHEP in a timely manner. And we are going to be working on draft tariffs, and hoping that the utilities will be able to file those with you no later than November 1st to get the program up and running. And then going forward, after we get this first phase of the program up and running, there are additional issues that the Commission has identified for further discussion, like how do we reach customers who are not necessarily enrolled with OHEP, but who could be eligible and benefit from the LIM? How do we reach customers in master metered apartment buildings and other topics like that? So with that, I'm happy to stop there and answer questions and also acknowledge that others may have comments today as well.
Thank you very much. So do we have questions from the bench here? Yeah, Commissioner Sushman.
I just want to acknowledge all of the great work that all of the stakeholders have done. This is very encouraging. It's very exciting to see. It's something that's very important. And so I just want to commend you on the great work that you've done and all of the stakeholders here. So thank you.
Commissioner Hoover.
So, the one concern I have is that there's a number of factors in this that are beyond our control. One, there is this proposal in the current proposed federal budget to actually get rid of LIHEAP funding. So the money that OHEP spends might go away. Now, I'm not sure that's a serious prospect of being enacted, but I am concerned that the federal Department of Human Services eliminated all the folks that were administering that program, and I'm not quite sure whether or not they've rehired any of these people or who's in fact doing it. So I guess I'm a little concerned about problems getting the money from the feds to the state. And then the other concern I have is because of the model that OHEP uses of having the actual intake and qualifications done by the local jurisdictions, I know there's sometimes been problems with how well some of them, do their job. But again, I mean, these are all things that we can't necessarily control, but may impact the ability for us to make the program work. But I guess the one specific question I have is, and maybe they can speak for themselves, but is there a reason why the Exelon companies oppose this? I mean, the others seem to be, maybe not thrilled with it, but at least acceptable of it. But I guess the Exelon people think we shouldn't do this, and I'm kind of wondering, but I guess I'm going to find out. So.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Crystal Barnett on behalf of the Maryland Joint Exelon Utilities. I'd like to thank our PC59 work group leader and the stakeholders for all of their hard work in developing the limited income mechanism. The Joint Exelon Utilities do strongly support having a limited income mechanism, and we've been working diligently with the work group to support its implementation. The concern that the Exelon Utilities have is simply put affordability. This would be adding costs that are unknown to the program right up front without an actual demonstrated need for gap coverage. And I think our comments are laid out well in the work group report. We have a chart that's in the work group report that demonstrates that a customer who actually applies on time will be able to obtain the benefit as planned. If you look at the work group report on page 4, where it goes through the hypothetical, the first statement is really key. If there's no problem, then they receive the benefit. The problem arises when a person applies late. And so that's a problem that can be avoided at a great cost. That could be a potential great cost. 12 months versus an extra 5 months could really greatly increase the cost of this program. And the second issue that's being raised is actual processing of claims or processing of applicants by OHEP. They point out that their peak is in April, July, and August. So even if a customer were to apply during the peak, they would still have plenty of time to process those claims before the end of the year for our customers to be able to apply and be a part of the program. So I think that we have to be concerned about program costs here because this program is for low-income customers, but we still have moderate-income customers who are struggling with affordability and other customers as well. And so I think that when we're developing it, if we see that there is a need for gap coverage, we can always add it at a later point in the program rather than adding it right up front at could be possibly a high cost. We're not really clear what the cost will be at this stage, and I think that that should be evaluated. Another concern that we have is that there will be customers who maybe simply don't reapply because they don't qualify anymore. They, maybe increase their income, they're no longer low income, and now we're automatically extending 5 months that could have been used for another person who needed that, be a part of the program during that time. And so now we're, using program costs for a customer who doesn't have a demonstrated need anymore to be on the program. I also have concerns that it could open the door for customers who don't qualify from the very beginning for OHEP benefits. They apply, and they're getting this automatic 5 months of time, and they could reapply every year and get 5 months of gap coverage right away. And that could be a problem because we can't walk those benefits back, and that could be a potential where, folks just simply apply to knowing they'll get the 5 months, and they can do that every year. We can't, it's automatic, so we wouldn't be able to say no, right? So that's an issue. And as I mentioned, these are all things that really could be avoided. There are social programs such as food stamps where customers have deadlines to apply, and those are deadlines. And people still apply for those benefits and are able to get them just by knowing their deadline date. So if we have customers and we educate them well, which we intend to be a part of when we tend to really get out there and educate customers about the programs and the program requirements, if they apply on time, just as it says on page 4 of their hypothetical, there'll be no problem. Customers just really need to be aware, and we need to really get out and educate customers about deadlines and dates. And I think that what can really serve both purposes, which is keep program costs low and keep customers who have the need receiving these benefits.
Commissioner McLean.
Good morning, ma'am. Does the clawback provision address any of the concerns you've raised?
You mean in terms of being able to have customers repay? I think that it puts the utility in a bad position, right? Of us having to go back to potential limited or moderate income customers to try to retract benefits that maybe we shouldn't be offering right from the beginning, but adding at a later point if it's a demonstrated need in the program. It complicates the program right from the beginning. I think we need to keep it as cost effective and as simple as we can and add as we need to.
Okay. And do you also share SMECO's concern about the potential added costs of doing the gap coverage?
In terms of programming for
Yes,
IT,
ma'am.
you mean? I think our IT could add that later at a minimal cost. We've explored that idea with IT. It would be basically, if we added that cost up front, it would be the same as if we added that cost, that programming later.
Okay.
Is what
Thank
we're
you.
hearing from IT.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Sushman.
So I'm a little confused about your understanding about the gap. I mean, my understanding is that you just will, for 5 months, avoid sending them back to a different rate. So you don't get the gap. You have the gap as a way to keep you in the LMI program. So I guess I'm not understanding how somebody could apply and have that gap be a way of getting around the unless I'm missing something.
Well, the way that it's being mentioned in the work group report is that a person could apply for OHEP benefits, and because their application takes a long time for processing, for example, like during a peak, they're saying that would create a gap in time, and that those customers should get.
But they wouldn't.
It should be a part of the limited income mechanism.
Right, but they wouldn't
Yeah.
have the LMI in the first place if they hadn't been approved by OHEP. I mean, you don't. So the gap is only a way. It's not so much a gap as you're just avoiding kicking them out of the program for 5 months.
Well, that could be if somebody's recertifying, right? If they were recertifying and they did in fact qualify, then that makes sense. There's no extra money being paid, right, or coming out of the program costs. But if a person is newly applying to OHEP for benefits and they're still processing their application, my reading of the work group report is that they would get a gap period of coverage while their application's being processed.
I don't read that. I mean, my
Well, that
sense.
would be a good thing then.
Okay, my understanding is that you don't get the LMI until OHAP approves you in the first place. Then you're part of the program, and all the GAP does is it just says we're not going to kick them off if there is some misalignment somewhere. I mean, there's a whole, and you read about a whole host of different reasons why someone got delayed. And the last thing we want to do, I mean, these are people who are struggling to pay. And you want them to pay, otherwise it goes into arrearages. So it's a benefit to the utility to have these customers be able to afford to pay something.
I agree.
And so, we want to avoid a situation where they get kicked out because something happened in a different program. And so it's not, I don't think of it as a gap where you're getting some additional extra money. All it does is it's just preventing you from getting kicked out of a program that you had qualified for in the first place.
Commissioner, if I may add, the
Please.
stakeholders' proposal, it does address the intent that you outlined there. It is a customer who had been certified by OHEP, had been in the LIM program, and is now reapplying. It's meant to cover any gaps in that, reapplication period or a period of time where, they may have lost their OHEP benefits.
Right, and then this idea of sort of retroactive credit, which presumably the Exelon utilities would not have a problem with if their OHEP benefits were to be established at some later date and they were kicked off the LMA program, then would you be supportive of a retroactive credit for them because they they should have been in the LMI program in the first place?
Let me check with my subject matter expert.
Well, but I could tell you that I would have a problem with that because these are the last people that you should sort of impose the additional costs on, and then provide them a credit afterwards if they had to use their rent money to pay for the extra money that they shouldn't have had to pay for in the first place.
Hey, Commissioner Suchman, I completely agree. The company supports the limited income mechanism, and we have no desire to remove anyone from a program who should have the benefit. But what we're looking to do is preserve affordability for this program and to make sure that only those who actually are eligible for the benefit are receiving it, because we do have other customers who are paying, and those could be moderate income customers who may be right on the brink of affordability, and the surcharge or how the mechanism needs to be affordable for them as well.
No, I understand,
And so
but I don't want a situation.
Affordability of the program.
No, I
That's all we're
understand,
trying
but I don't want a situation where then you kick somebody off of the LMI program, they can't pay their utility bill, and then they end up getting disconnected.
Yeah.
That's a much worse situation.
The utilities have no desire to negatively impact any low-income customers and to discourage them from being eligible for these programs.
Well, and that's why.
But I guess what I'm saying is, I think it needs to be balanced, and we just want to make sure that it's aligned with other social programs such as food stamps, where there are deadlines to apply for things. We have to, we have to make sure that there is affordability on one hand, and if we can simply solve affordability of the program by saying you have to apply by this deadline, we socialize that to customers, and they in fact apply by that deadline, then the program costs are more affordable for everyone.
Well, I understand, but you're keeping them in a program for that period where there is a possible delay in some other program. It's not like you're adding money to it, and this is a compromise. You're not keeping them in forever. You're keeping them in for 5 months. And at 5 months, if the situation hasn't been resolved, they do get kicked out. So this is, I view this as a compromise, but it's also a safety net. It's a safety net to protect them if there's a problem with some other program that we have no control over. We don't control OHAP. So there could be a problem there where they're not getting LIHEAP money, and all of a sudden they can't make decisions because the LIHEAP money is not in. I can spin out a variety of different scenarios, but mostly I'm just concerned that low and moderate income customers need to be protected, and that's what the point of this program is, and it's not doing anybody any good to knock them out.
I do agree with that. I think that the alternative is that we could set a deadline that is like end of July, because if we're looking at OHEP's peak periods and we apply the 45 days and the 95-day for extensions, they would still have time to apply. So if we set an earlier deadline in the middle of the year, then that might make sense. I'm just thinking out loud. But
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Commissioner Sushman and the company. So we had a couple of companies and parties that have filed initial comments with us today. I know people are starting to gather behind the podium, so before we go too far down in that direction, I want to make sure that we give the opportunities for the parties that did file comments, if they wanted to make additional comments, to do so before we started branching off into different issues that I know we all want to talk about, and I think we've got the time to do that a little bit. So why don't we first start with, let's see, so who's ready here?
Good morning, Commissioners. Contasia Scott on behalf of Potomac Edison.
All right.
Good morning. So as has been noted, Potomac Edison filed some very short comments representing our position in this matter. We represented that the company is supportive of a 3-month gap coverage period, and this is because the company's Ohio-affiliated utilities also have a similar mechanism in place that is a result of the Ohio Administrative Code, where there is a continuing eligibility period that a continuing eligibility period that amounts to 60 days. And this period is based upon the customer having an annual verification date, and then 60 days post that date, if they have not recertified their income at that point, then the requisite agency for Ohio is able to take the steps to remove the customer from the program. So before the annual recertification date, the agencies or utilities perform outreach or send letters for recertification, a certain number of months maybe. I'm not exactly sure of exactly how long that date is. I don't have a subject matter expert with me today. But they perform outreach before the annual verification date, requiring the customer to provide that information to the company. However, they are not removed until after 60 days post that annual verification date if that information is not received. So our position is simply based on having that backstop that we already have some experience with due to the experience of our affiliated companies in Ohio. And if you have any questions, I will answer to the best of my abilities. But as I have stated, my subject matter expert was unable to attend today.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Sushman?
So it sounds like it could be at least 3 months before any action is taken. So I guess, would you have a problem with 5 months? Would that cause a problem for the utility?
I will need to go back and have some internal conversations about that, but I'm happy to provide that answer to the commission.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I did have one question for Potomac Edison on this, and I'm not sure if it's one that's without your extra folks here you could answer for me. But if your program is obviously 3 months in Ohio, who handles the enrollment there? Is it through the certification process, through Ohio's version of what we call OHEP here, through the LAHI program?
I believe so, but I'm unable to answer with, more specificity than that. But I believe the Ohio Code does refer to the Ohio agency that handles the enrollments, so the OHEP equivalent.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Does either Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative? I thought I saw somebody. There you are. I thought he was there a second ago.
Good morning, Acting Chair Linton, members of the Commission. Damon Krieger on behalf of Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. So we did not file written comments, so to the extent that you wanted to take somebody else, appreciate that. But otherwise, happy to make our comments now.
Okay, I thought I saw some, but all right, go ahead.
So thank you.
Since you're there.
So actually, as a threshold matter, appreciate the questions from Commissioner Sussman, because we thought that the gap coverage also extended from an eligibility requirement to new applicants. So it sounds like the proposal before the commission is to limit it to individuals that are already under the LIM program, meaning they've already gone through the eligibility determination. If that is the case, our concerns are actually mitigated to some significant extent. So while we initially opposed the notion of gap coverage, that was largely on the basis of concerns over new applicants who had not gone through an initial eligibility determination yet. So if that's not the case, that does alleviate some of our concerns. That being said, the real problem statement here is that OHEB does not appear to be able to process applications fast enough. And so the proposed solution is gap coverage, which from our perspective could serve as a reverse incentive to OHEB and to potential applicants in terms of getting the processing speed of eligibility determinations up. And so we are concerned as a threshold matter. There could be increased costs to the program. We're less concerned now hearing the clarification to the eligibility determination about increased program costs in terms of the incentive itself, but there could be, to Commissioner McLean's earlier point, there could be increased operational costs from the perspective of implementing the gap coverage. We have not quantified it yet, and it's probably relatively minimal, so I don't think that should be a sort of restrictive notion from moving forward, but there would be additional costs to some extent. I think at the end of the day, as was indicated in the stakeholder proposal, what's really important here is that we do have some customer protections in place to the extent that the Commission wants to go forward at this time. And our belief, again, as sort of a threshold consideration, is that it's probably premature to consider gap coverage, similar to what the Exelon Utilities indicated in their comments. The cooperative submitted a limited income mechanism proposal January of 2024, almost 2.5 years ago. We're ready to move forward with that mechanism. Let's see if it works. Let's see if gap coverage is even required at this point. We don't know because we haven't moved forward yet. So as a threshold consideration, we think it's premature to impose gap coverage, which could result in more costs and could adversely impact the affordability for all of the other customers in the mix. So we are concerned about that. But to the extent that the Commission does want to move forward now in the interest of fairness at the core level, we do think that it's important to have a customer protection in place in the form of a requirement that to the extent a member, an individual participating in the LIM is deemed ineligible and receives gap coverage, there should be a reimbursement requirement as a condition of continued service. So that's important. We also support the notion of a slightly smaller gap period to the extent that the Commission moves forward at this time, 3 months versus the 5 months included in the proposal. And with that, happy to take any questions.
Morning,
Commissioner
sir.
McLean.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Do you think, in terms of let's see if it works, the let's see if it works approach, do you think a year is sufficient, assuming we were to agree with you, to see, if gap coverage is actually needed?
So the intent is to implement this at the end of this year, so to begin in 2027. As long as we get through the OHEB cycle at least once, to me, that would seem like we would get enough data to see if there are sufficient gaps to warrant gap coverage.
Right, okay. All right, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Sussman.
So I guess I have to say that I don't love the idea of the term gap coverage because it suggests that you're getting something that you're not entitled to. And really all this is doing is it's just preventing you from getting kicked out of the program because there's a problem with OHEP. And I can tell you that OHEP probably didn't appreciate hearing that we should do something to put some, some fire under their feet to get them sort of moving along because no sister agency ever wants to hear that. But I guess I don't understand if you are eligible, entitled, and the problem was an OHEP problem or some other problem, you're not seeing an increase in cost because you were always entitled. You're just not getting dropped out because there's a problem somewhere else. So I guess I'm not seeing the problem now. If you were not entitled to stay on the program and then you and then you stayed on, that's a different matter, and you can have a conversation about clawing back. But just to stay on the program, I'm not understanding increases in costs, because it's just, you are entitled to be on that program. You're just getting that extra protection of not getting kicked off. I mean, it's really just a safety net.
Well, it's your second point that we have concerns with. So to the
The
extent
the
that
clawback.
that someone is continuing in the program but no longer ineligible because income has changed or other circumstances have changed. And so that's why we propose, if we're going to move forward, we should have this reimbursement requirement.
Okay, and have you had a conversation, Santiago Mosier, have you had a conversation about the clawback provision?
Yes, commissioners, this has come up in the working group.
Okay.
Really, we haven't discussed it in depth, but nobody in the working group has opposed such an idea.
Okay, okay, so that's, I mean, it just sounds like it's, this is all kind of work in progress, that you're sort of moving, you could have the safety net, and then you could have a provision that sort of addresses situations where somebody wasn't eligible in the first place. Yeah, I guess for both of you.
Yeah.
My eyes are moving.
Yes, Commissioner. To your point, yes, the intent of this proposal is to just extend the safety net for eligible customers, and in the event that a customer reapplies for OHEP and is receiving this, for better or worse, gap coverage, and it turns out they were not actually eligible again for OHEP, then the working group is willing to explore how to rectify, when a customer may have received some period of time of the discount that they were no longer eligible for.
Right, because those are different issues. One of them is to just provide protection so that no one gets kicked off. And then the other piece of it is that you shouldn't have been on in the first place, and therefore you owe the utility money. Assuming that's what you decide to do. But they are different issues, I think, and I think they have to be treated differently.
I would agree with that.
So, okay, thank you.
And I would say that they're related in the sense that to the extent that there's going to be gap coverage that's going to allow continued receipt of a benefit, even though eligibility or re-eligibility has not been reestablished, so to speak, there's a potential windfall. And that's the concern. There's already going to be a challenge, frankly, communicating this to the paying customers, that there's going to be another line item surcharge on their bill that is going to impact the affordability for customer members of the cooperative. And so from the perspective of messaging this, we want to, at a minimum, be able to say, to the extent that an individual is accepted into the program and because of reasons beyond OHEB or others' control, the recertification can't take place and they're receiving gap coverage, if they're deemed ineligible, they should have to reimburse those dollars to customers so that that subsidy doesn't grow.
But they're not receiving gap coverage. They're just continuing to stay in the LMI program. You're just preventing them from getting kicked off. That's why I feel like this term is misleading. All you're doing is you're just preventing somebody from getting kicked off. Is if it turns out that they were not eligible for that period, then you can deal with that issue. But I think I just feel like you're suggesting that they're getting an additional benefit, and they're not. You're just not kicking them off the program.
They're only getting an additional benefit. I think we're saying the same thing if they're deemed ineligible by OHEP at a later date.
That's right.
I think we're saying the same thing. But but that messaging point is really important for the cooperative. We want to be able to say that individuals are not receiving a windfall to the extent that they are deemed ineligible in the future. But you're right, to the extent that the eligibility continues, then there's no gap in it, and I'm not sure we appreciate the terminology either. The last thing I do want to say, at least from the cooperative's perspective, is that we do have concerns already foundationally that this program will serve as a disincentive to customers contributing to other programs like the cooperative's Members Helping Members program. There's only so much charitable contributions to go around, and this is a mandatory contribution. It's a mandatory subsidy. And so the more that this program's cost increases, the less likely individuals will be apt to contribute to other programs like our Members Helping Members program. We don't know if that will happen or not, but it's reasonable to assume that that will be the case, and likely the fuel fund and other programs across the state may also suffer.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also received some comments from the Maryland Energy Advocates Coalition. Good morning.
Good morning,
It's
PSC
still
Commission.
morning.
It's Laurel, and I'm from, is it morning?
It's
Yes.
still morning, yeah. 1 minute.
The central, here's a few facts that we need to add to the conversation. We are not the first state to do a limited income mechanism. Every program that does it right now has, let's call it gap coverage. Illinois, PEPCO's RAD program that's been in existence in the DC area for electricity has a gap coverage. Illinois has a gap coverage extending all the way through to the next cycle, to the end of the next cycle. Ohio's, if I heard the Potomac Edison person correctly, is based on the regulated amount of time that an application can go through, probably their Ohio's LIHEAP office, whatever that is. And I have to make sure that you know that, because there are other states out there that have been doing this for years. And we met with the Illinois LIHEAP director, who's fantastic and has a lot of data. And he said this was the last thing we had to worry about was gap coverage. So the reason why the gap coverage is coming, and I have to make sure that everyone knows, it appears that we've thrown OHEP under the bus. But in my charts, because this is so conceptual, the reason why we charted this out in calendars is that it's not that OHEP isn't doing their job, it's that life happens, and the gap coverage is for anybody who's already been in the LIM program. And that person could have put in a terrific application in year one and now has 2 jobs. And Amazon, I see this a lot, Amazon pays weekly. And there are many Amazon workers who have 2 jobs, and you can have as many as 6 paychecks. That's if you're not weekly on both jobs, and I have a client who has 8 paychecks. Your paychecks have to match the last 30 days. That seems super simple, and that is not how it works out in the real world. So that same person could be like, I have a job at Amazon, and now I have 6 paychecks, and they mess up, and they only send in 5. It's not that OHEP's doing their job, it's that our state has legally put boundaries on how long an OHEP application has to be processed, which is 45 days. And then if something's missing, in the same law that this came out of HB 606, there's a 90-day curing period. That is a fancy word for you have 90 days to get your docs back in and for that OHEP office to process the application. That is legally how long a good application has to be processed. So if you're a LIM person the first year, and let's say we get really good at marketing to our ratepayers, which I would love to do, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think we're that great at marketing this stuff at all. And half the time we're like, it's because people are dumb. And I'm like, where is the marketing on this? It's for people that get online and read stuff. Even if a person in year 2 does it all right, they're still going to go through that little application. And just like Ohio, in our state, it is 5 months. And I also, for the record, want to say that DSS OHEP has been fabulous in this process. I have never seen agencies work together as well. And, I've been on a few working groups. And the reason why gap coverage exists is when you look at those charts, can you imagine a family who was getting for 12 months on average a $60 bill gets a $240 bill? What do we know is all going to happen immediately? They're going to call everybody. They're going to call OHEP, they're going to call the utility, and they're going to wonder what on earth is happening. And quite frankly, you don't know, and they're going to call critical medical needs. You don't know what's happening because you're not the OHEP agency. So the real question is, it's a risk reward. It's knowing that life and the way that our calendars merge, you can't just drop somebody after 12 months and expect them to come back perfectly. I don't do it. I miss my subscriptions all the time. I even have them in my calendar. Don't forget, Laurel, get off of Apple, TV so that you're not paying because you watched the one show. So the real cost in this, which I think the PSC staff is going to go through, and the question to answer that I know OHEP is running this right now is what percent of OHEP families reapply year after year after year after year? It's quite high. In Illinois, he said it's super, super high. We don't have the actual number. The extra cost, the people who are going to get this who don't deserve it, are the portion of people that are one and done. They apply. And yes, if those people aren't eligible anymore going forward, they will have gotten a few months of help. And every other state is doing that and taking it on, I imagine, because the customer service costs are so high in the confusion. So I wanted to make those points, and I do believe that OHEP is running those numbers right now to verify what portion of Maryland OHEP accounts that are on OHEP reapply year after year after year after year. And then theoretically, there is no extra cost. It's only for the people who are one and done. So if you have any questions, that's why the charts are there. And you do kind of have to like grab a cup of coffee and look at it. But I just want to be very clear. As somebody who's really worked with OHEP a lot and done a lot of complaining, OHEP's processes are much better. This is just a fact of our legal laws on how long it could take. And there's a lot of people that get these requests for additional letters to bring in more documentation to prove that this current application is legal and they have all the documents. So when I wrote that one for a perfect application, that literally was somebody who had a perfect application and perfectly did it on those dates. That is probably, if I had to, spitball, half the people. So those are key points to know. We still have more data to come, and every other state has this, you could call it continuation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. I did have one question. I'm not sure, Mr. McAuliffe, if are you planning, before I let the speaker go, are you planning on speaking about the overall program or a particular issue?
Yes, the overall program, just kind of address some of the comments the utilities made.
Okay. Maybe I'll save my question then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. McCall, we'll hear from our staff. Mr. McAuliffe?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Drew McAuliffe on behalf of staff. Yeah, so just wanted to provide staff's perspective and try to clarify some things. So frankly, I agree a lot with what some of the statements Commissioner Suchman was making. We don't necessarily love the term gap coverage. We just kind of think you're eligible for 17 months if you received OHEP benefits. You're eligible for this program for 17 months. So, and we see that across the country, as Ms. Peltier alluded to. So California does 24 months, New York 18, Illinois up to 24, Oregon 24, we've heard Ohio does 15, PEPCO in DC does 18. So we're a little perplexed by some of the pushback. And again, to what Ms. Peltier was saying, a lot of these are repeat customers, so it just doesn't make sense to staff to have folks drop off and come back on because, they don't always apply for OHEP on exact 12-month cadence. It's based on fiscal years, so, you could apply in August one year and then October the next year, but you're going to get dropped off for 2 months from this program just because you applied at a different time frame. Again, doesn't make much sense to staff. I would also agree with the comment that, the costs really aren't necessarily additional because many of these are repeat customers. And it's important to note, which we haven't heard today, that this discount will be tiered. So folks on the, with the lowest income will get the highest discount. So if we're concerned about cost overruns, the folks that, for lack of a better term, would graduate out of this program were most likely already at the higher income tiers, so they would be receiving a very small, if any, benefit at all through this program, because if their energy burden's already below 6%, they wouldn't even get a discount. It depends per utility, but just say it's 5%, are we really going to ask them to give back $50, 6 months later because, now they're no longer qualified for OHEP? Staff is very much against the clawback. I mean, again, these folks would be receiving a benefit, quote unquote, they shouldn't be getting for 6 extra months. Again, and it'll be tiered, so it won't be a large amount of money. So we just, again, it just doesn't kind of make sense to have this program and say, oh, well, now you can afford your bills, give us $50 back. when you've been struggling in the previous year. It just doesn't make sense to staff and kind of seems against the spirit of the program. And I should say staff has always been very concerned about the cost of this program. We've been bringing it up for the last year and a half. So I don't want to, seem like staff is just saying, yes, let's spend all this money. We are very much concerned about that, but we don't really see a huge amount of cost coming from this particular proposal. Let me just see. Yeah, and we do keep hearing like, well, folks need to apply on time. And again, it's based on fiscal year. Folks don't necessarily apply in a 12-month cadence. So to kind of insinuate it's the customer's fault for not applying exactly 12 months is, again, we think is not necessarily appropriate. But yeah, I think I can leave it there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Questions for Mr. McAuliffe? All right, so I have one.
Sure.
And this problem, it seems to me at least to sound a lot like what the state and DHR at the time and the utility companies all went through when they created the 55-day hold concept. It's a different issue slightly, addresses a different problem, but it's the same kind of scenario where the customer was waiting for the state agency to complete the process before they could receive benefits. While waiting also exposed them to utility activity, collection activity specifically. So I think the first question I had was just to make sure I understood what we were being asked to approve. We'll use the term gap, so I'll keep using that here. That gap period we're talking about is at the conclusion of the first,
Correct.
at the completion of the first year or period of time that the customer has received a limb. I'll call it a grant. If it's not a grant, I know, but or a benefit.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. So Mr. Krieger's concern, I don't think would be valid. Yeah. So the additional time is for someone who's already previously been accepted to OHEP. It would not be like, oh, hey, I'm applying. I want 5 months,
Right.
to get my stuff together. No.
Okay, so because OHEP's application process starts on June 1 or July 1, and even now our tariffs we're looking at starting this program at the end of the year.
Correct.
So if it was at the beginning, everybody's facing a gap right away because they would have been already applied for OHEP and already be in the utility system as eligible. But our program wouldn't even start until the end of that year. So they wouldn't have. There would already be a gap between their next application and their participation in our program, which would just be started. So we're looking at this happening in, I guess it would be next year. Well, yeah, I'm trying to even see when it actually starts, because if our program is a 12-month program, and it runs from, we'll just say January 1 to January 1, after our tariffs are approved and everything. But the OHEP application period opens up in July of every year.
Right.
We're going to keep having the same loop, assuming customers apply for assistance with OHEP as quickly as July 1. And we do know that some customers will apply in April and then they're eligible to apply again in July and they can do it again.
Right.
So as long as they bring the same paperwork or go through the streamline process, they're eligible, they get the grant.
Right.
So I guess I'm trying to make sure that what we're looking to approve fixes the problem that we're seeing.
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say for that first year, there's always going to be this gap issue because you have to start it at some point in time. The limb mechanism, that is. Not to confuse the issue, but I would say staff had always assumed we would use the previous fiscal year's OHEP eligibility to then give this to the customer for the next calendar year, so there would never be confusion about who's eligible. But that's kind of been moved on. But yeah, so for this first year, I think we still have to discuss the implementation a bit, but I guess it was staff's assumption on, January 1st, the utilities would just give the limb mechanism to anybody who's currently approved for OHEP.
Right, and that's historically, I know Ms. Pelletier raised a question about this, about number of customers that repeat. Historically, it was around 85%. And I don't know with the challenges with some customers losing their employment through the federal government and other additional efforts that OHEP has made, if that number is smaller now because we've got a lot of new customers that have participated. But it was typically it was a good sized number. And it was easily 3/4 or higher of the current applicants. So if we assume that to be true, even if it isn't, by the time we start our program in January, there's going to be a healthy number of consumers already enrolled in LIHEAP. So, and I think we know already what that number, well, we can find out right now actually what those numbers could look like just for this past year. So to give us some idea about the numbers we're looking at going forward. So, again, I'm not entirely sure. I know what the problem is, but I don't know that the proposal we're looking at fixes it. And so that's kind of where I'm struggling now.
So the problem is, I guess, with staff and the other interveners who supported this proposal is we're just concerned that folks may not apply on a 12-month cadence. So they will technically still be an OHEP recipient, but they will be dropped off the limb because, just say they applied for the benefits in October in October 2026. So under the utilities proposal, they get the limb benefits October 2027. Just say in this circumstance, they apply for OHEP again December 2027. So the utilities will drop them from the limb for at least November 2027. But the customer has always been OHEP eligible in that time frame. So that's what staff wants to avoid, these customers just kind of bouncing back and forth.
Okay, and I don't mean to monopolize there, so, he's teasing me. If the utility companies are using the LIHEAP enrollment marker in their system, so is there a separate limb marker now that you've created, or are you still using the OHEP one? Because I've been hearing this term that they'll be dropped from the limb, but we're using the OHEP application process. So
Hi, Jen Karras on behalf of BGE. So when we get an enrollment from OHEP, we're going to use that date and apply it for 12 months is how it would work. So the way we're seeing it, like they would have OHEP, also OHEP benefits would drop off prior to the limb, which would last 12 months no matter what.
So let's use our existing, the scenario we're in right now. In January of next year, we will have started the limb, the tariffs are filed, we're moving forward.
Yep.
You'll have a number of consumers that have already participated and have enrolled in LIHEAP. On June 30th, you'll be ready, you'll be getting your systems clean. I know you guys do this every year. You'll be cleaning your systems for the new LIHEAP year. But all of those customers are only 6 months in the limb process.
So if a customer doesn't re-enroll,
In which
they're
month?
still so we're going to put all these customers on January 1st. Let's call it January 1st just to keep it clean. If they don't enroll in June with OHEP again, they're still going to have the utility limb apply for the calendar year, 12 months.
And so how, in your system, do you have a separate marker to keep track of that?
That's what we're doing, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's what I
And if
didn't
they
know. Okay.
do reapply in June or at any point, we're going to then extend it 12 more months. So
So you'll have
whatever,
two.
yeah,
You have
whatever
two
the
separate
date is that we're getting from OHEP from their enrollment, we're adding 12 months. So on a rolling basis, like even if they apply again before the 12-month utility limb, we're going to add 12 months to whatever their OHEP enrollment date is.
And I should say it'll be unique for that first year because it's the
Yeah.
implementing year.
They're just adding
So that is
12.
different.
So under that scenario, the gap coverage could actually be longer than 5 months.
I don't believe it is.
Okay.
Because their OHEP eligibility ends in, and anyone can correct me, but June 30th, right? Their OHEP eligibility is always going to end June 30th. The utility limb is going to be 12 months from whatever that date that they enrolled is.
But that's the date they enrolled through OHEP.
Right.
But I thought, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought you'd said, okay, if the LIM starts, a lot of acronyms here.
I know.
If the LIM starts on the 1st of January, it's going to go through December 31st, regardless.
Yes. But they need to re-enroll with OHEP prior to June 30th in order to maintain their OHEP eligibility.
Okay, so let's say that doesn't happen.
Yep.
So the LIM coverage would end when?
Well, it still goes to December. So if they don't enroll, recertify, sorry, so many words, but if they don't recertify with OHEP, and so they are no longer OHEP eligible from July to December, they won't be OHEP eligible, but they're still going to have the utility limb because we're just doing a blanket 12 months. So if we add and say 3 more months, 5 more months, whatever the gap coverage is, that's going to apply to every customer who's participating. So I think the general hope is that customers are moving out of being OHEP eligible. We want customers to
So
increase. We're always going to add on that gap coverage to every customer. I think Drew said it correctly. I think it's not a gap of not kicking people off. It's just saying the program is 17 months.
Yeah.
It's either 12 months or some other time.
Right.
It's going to apply to everybody.
it seems like it's fixed itself already. And
Well,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I think that's just for the implementing year, where they're saying it goes to that whole calendar year, because it's always going to be 12 months from when the customer gets OHEP. So I think
Right.
what's confusing is that implementing year. How much?
Okay, so
Right, and it's going to be, and it's going to be different for different customers, but once you get through that sort of first year, then it's going to be tied to when you get your benefits.
Correct, it's going to be
And
12
you're
months
just
from-
going to, and it's just going to keep, and so then the only problem is going to be that year where you have a problem with your application, where you need to submit some additional data, and that's where that additional time period, that gap, is going to protect that customer. So, Mike, and does anybody have a sense of how often that happens? I mean, are we going to expect 80% of everything to sort of go pretty smoothly, and it's the 20% that we're going to have a problem?
I can't say. I don't know. Well, yeah. So I mean, with DH the OHEP report on EOSP, I mean, it was saying like 85% sometimes of applications are incomplete. So obviously, that gives some insinuation
Okay.
that there'll
Okay.
be
So that's, and
at
that
least of the
act-
ones that are denied, I should say, 85% are incomplete, and it's over 100,000. So
Okay, so that really actually sort of demonstrates why we do need a little bit of flexibility to, and then once the application then is approved at OHEP, it's going to restart that 12 months, and then it'll continue on.
But yeah, so the implementing year, I don't know that we fully fleshed out because, yeah, I think that. So, so I'm just saying, I think that example is a little confusing because I think the way Ms. Karras was saying it. If
Well, actually, it sounds like
everybody-
the implementing year is going to be up to 12 months.
Yeah.
And then
Rolling.
and then it'll be rolling, tied to when you do the OHEP application.
But how do we get to that point? And that's I think that's what's throwing me off. Because if our program, I've been using the data January 1st, but if our program starts January 1st,
correct,
but the customer enrolled in OHEP at some point prior to that, between July and January 1st.
Right.
Our program's for 12 months. So from January to December, that's the 12 months. In between that period of time, sometime by July 1st, their OHEP enrollment expires, and so they have to do it again.
Right.
But we've been suggesting here that the OHEP enrollment and our program are somehow or another going to align with each other. So when does that happen?
They are. So as the utilities were saying, it'll be 12 months from when they're approved for OHEP. So just say it's in April, they get the limb for 12 months from April. I think there's some confusion about this implementing year. So again, I don't know that we fleshed it out. So, we could do the implementing year where it's based on your previous OHEP date. So if you were approved, just say this year, April 2026, starting 2027, you'll only get the limb till April 2027 until you reapply. We haven't really discussed that first year. So just say they even get it the whole calendar year 2027, no matter when they applied for OHEP in 2026. to my understanding, their clock will reset once they get OHEP for 2027. So just say they apply in April 2027. It's my understanding the utilities will apply the 12 months from there. So they don't get the whole next calendar year. It'll end April 2028, if that makes sense.
So you're okay. So you're what you're doing then is you're cutting back the limb for that second year. So it's not 12 months in the second year. You're cutting it back to whenever the OHIP enrollment happened.
Yeah, so for any enrollment, it's the utilities proposal. It's always going to be 12 months. I think there's just confusion talking about this implementing year.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing it a little bit, and we haven't really fleshed out how that was going to work. At least I don't recall.
Well, I mean, you can sort of say. Sorry. You can say, the program goes into effect January 1st, and we're going to base it on whoever is eligible from OHEP. And then have that continue. I mean, it'll be 12 months, but it's not really 12 months because it's going to then be tied to the next time you're OHEP eligible, which could be June. And then once you're OHEP eligible, then 12 months will go from that point on.
Right.
So on some level, it's kind of its own gap.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
but it's a gap to start the program.
Right.
So-
That's the thing that I was not catching.
What I was just going to flag for the commissioners, Taylor Beckham, on behalf of that Joint Maryland Exelon Utilities, is the chart that we provided in the comments kind of illustrates this. And I think where the parties are really looking at are those folks who don't go and apply for OHEP eligibility until, call it November, and they would have because theoretically, if you look at the chart that we provided in our comments, there's already a level of gap coverage provided for everyone who enrolls in the program in January. So if you reapply in April, reapply in July, theoretically you should still remain OHEP eligible. You're still getting that limb discount during that time. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't losing sight of the chart here. But the idea is, yes, there's those folks who, if they don't apply for their OHEP recertification until November, that time frame is that question here. And what we are particularly focused on is, again, that recertification. And as Ms. Kara said, we're not going to be able to only cherry pick those specific customers. It would just be, as Drew pointed out, it would be a program that is 15 months long or 17 months long. It's going to apply to everyone. And just wanted to flag the comment that was made about what is done in DC. That program is for limited and moderate income customers. So there's less of those fringe customers. So the overall customer impact, of the added cost of having a longer program, you have less of the concern about those customers who are moderate income having to foot that bill. Here, again, this is specific to limited income customers. So for the overall customer affordability, it's not quite apples to apples with what's going on in DC as opposed to what's going on here in Maryland.
I did have one question I was actually going to be for Washington Gas, but you're here representing a DC company, so you'll do. DC uses a credit or approach as opposed to a forward-looking type of approach like the one we're looking at here. Does the company have a preference as to which one will work better?
So when you say a credit approach, what I believe PEPCO in DC is not similar to WGL in that it's a retroactive.
Right, retroactive is what I meant.
Yeah, I don't think that PEPCO does it that way in DC. It's just a longer time program.
And Commissioners, if I may, so I think there are a couple of issues that I'd like to try to clarify, if I may. So one is, one of the things that we've heard from Ms. Karras with BG and the Exelon Utilities is if you were to grant the extension of the period of time for a limb, just make it applicable for everybody. That is something that's done in other states. We do see other states that have the 18-month limited income discount program, or even 24 months in some cases. And so, I think the working group would be amenable if just on a blanket basis that the coverage were made 17 months or 15 months instead of 12 months. That might simplify things and simplify the implementation of the program to some degree. I also do just want to emphasize that we're not talking about the first year of the program. We're talking about a future year when we're still working with OHEP customers who are used to applying for their program benefits at maybe a certain time of the year, or again, they go in to reapply for their benefits and there's something wrong with their application and so on. And so as Mr. McAuliffe said, we're not really worried about the first year of implementation of the program. We're very concerned about what happens after the first year of implementation of the program. It might be helpful, I'm not sure if there's an appetite to go through any of the timeline slides that Ms. Peltier put together, but that could help to clarify things for you today. The other thing I'd like to mention is if you are interested in having the working group explore that clawback provision, so in the event that a customer is receiving an extended period of time for their limb, they go back to apply for OHEP benefits and it turns out they're no longer eligible. If you would like the working group to actually go ahead and implement some sort of a clawback in that case, I think it would be helpful to have specific direction on that.
I'd actually like to sort of get a better sense of whether this would actually be a problem, because I could imagine a clawback would involve some additional expense on the part of the utility to claw back, as Mr. McAuliffe had suggested, $50. And so you end up spending much more to implement a provision to address a problem that doesn't exist. So I think if it's possible to have that be flagged as an issue to explore when the provision goes into effect, so that we don't have to necessarily make a decision, but that it remains on the table. If it turns out to not be a problem, then it's something that we don't necessarily have to do, and then we avoid having to spend the money on software updates, which always seem to be a lot of money. So.
Are you able to put back up your the slide with the next steps on it? All right, what comes next? Yes. What I wanted to make sure I understood what was needed from what the work group needed from the commission, either today or very quickly, in order to stay in line with the what comes next schedule you have currently. Obviously, we're looking at tariffs filed in November. Are any of but it sounds like, based on the conversations we've had, that the first year transitional issues, we need to still work through those before the gap issue shows up. I guess it would be year 2 or at some point thereafter, after the first year. So is the gap issue an issue that needs to be decided today or very quickly before the work group gets back together to talk about cost allocation and some of the other issues you have on what's next?
Our request for a decision on this issue quickly really is related to the utilities coding and programming needs. Now, I do believe that, I don't want to speak for the utilities, and I will say that when it comes to their IT needs, that's definitely above my pay grade. But one of the reasons we've been in such a sprint is because the utilities have made it very, very clear that they have a lot of work ahead of them to code and program their systems to implement the program as we get it finally designed. And so, from my point of view as the working group leader, I think it would be helpful to have this decision quickly so that this can be programmed into the system as we get the program up and running. I think it's probably something that can be programmed into the systems later, but it may cost more later.
Okay. Yeah, well, we heard today that the companies are looking to create a whole new marker within their system for LIM customers. So that's going to be, is that, you can just kind of nod, is that true for all of the companies, that you're all looking to do something like that? Like a separate category? Okay. Everybody's nodding yes. So, okay. Okay. Did you need us to also, I want to say comment or respond on, because it really wasn't presented in front of us, but it kind of is in front of us now as a result of the conversation. But just the overall first-year transition issues. I mean, it sounded as though there was some decisions that have been made about how the limb is going to be treated in the first year, where it eventually will match up with the OHEP application process, but it doesn't initially. So is that something that the work group needed the commission to comment on or respond to, or is that something that parties have all agreed is the way it needs to work?
So generally speaking, the parties have all agreed on the 12-month general period for the limb, and specifically it'll start on January 1st, 2027, unless any of the utilities are ready to do it earlier. I think that, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Commissioner, so I apologize, but I think that this issue of the potential lapse in coverage is really the main issue that we're asking for your guidance on. I think, as we go into the first year of implementation, we'll have a lot of OHEP customers who will be getting the limb benefit to start for 12 months. And then as the program progresses, we'll see that different customers will apply on different timelines. Their application processes could take longer or shorter, depending on paperwork, depending on the volume of applications any office is receiving, and so on and so forth. And so, again, it's that going forward period of time where we're concerned about the lapse in coverage for certain customers.
All right, thank you. Anything further for any parties? No? All right, seeing none. Yeah, I'd love to make an motion today, but I think that we need to take this one under advisement too. There's several issues here that I've listed that I think we need to comment on. But I do appreciate very much so the work that the work group has done. I'm sure my colleagues agree with me on that. In fact, I know they do because they've already said so. I know personally from having worked on these issues many years ago, I can only imagine what the meetings were like. So I very much so appreciate the fact that you were in them and not me. So that was our last administrative item on our agenda today. So thank all of you for being here today. Seeing no other matters before us, we'll take this one under advisement and issue item number 13 and issue an order in the very short term. With that, we are adjourned.